Part 3, Chapter 4, Bad Luck in the Bootlace Magician. Micah spent at least an hour with Terpsichore each day, and sometimes more, depending on the mood she was in. An adult magician was always in the paddock in case he needed help. Usually, it was one of the strong men, or Mr. Head, so when he arrived with the food bucket, he was surprised to see the lightbender standing outside the hidden scene. "I just came from a meeting with the manager," the illusionist explained. "Since I was here anyway, I thought I'd stand watch." "Aren't you coming inside?" Micah asked, running his fingers in a zigzag down the seam. The fabric split, and an eager blue-green nose shoved itself out. "I will if you want," said the lightbender, "but the manager feels you have a firm handle on the job. He suggested that you might try it alone today. I'll be right here if you have any trouble." "I can do it," Micah said at once. "I've had plenty of practice." When he entered the paddock, he was immediately greeted with a happy tootling sound and a friendly jab to the stomach. "Oof," he said. "Hello, Terp. You're going to be too big to do that soon, and I've brought you lunch." He waved the bucket enticingly. When the foal sniffed at the bucket and snorted unhappily, he set it down and pulled a strand of knots filled with special food memories out of his pocket. He'd tried many different versions of this project without much success, but he kept at it just in case it was helping in some way he couldn't see. Today he'd tie a line of small knots into a length of silver ribbon and stuffed them with images of frosty soda bottles on hot summer days and long nighttime drives in Grandpa Ephraim's car on the way to their favorite pizza restaurant. He showed the knots to Terpsichore, and as usual, she ignored them completely. Micah wrapped the ribbon around the handle of the food bucket, figuring it couldn't hurt. Then he resorted to less dignified techniques. He danced around with the bucket, sniffing the contents and making loud yum, yum sounds. Eventually, Terp decided that it wasn't fair he was having so much fun without her, and she trotted over to stick her head in the bucket. Dulcie had worked her magic so that the new food didn't look too different from the melted yellow goop the unicorn was used to, and she dug in with gusto after she'd tasted a bite. When she'd finished, they played tag, and after that, sweaty, grass-stained, and with an empty bucket in hand, Micah left the foal to her own devices. "Success?" asked the lightbender when Micah emerged from the scene. She ate every bite. The illusionist was heading back to his tent for a 2 o'clock show, and Micah followed him, planning to change into fresher clothes. Outside, the drone of rainforest insects was so loud that Micah couldn't hear it, even over the music and the excited chatter of the visiting children. It was a warm, humid day, and earlier it had been sunny, but now dark clouds were gathering in the sky overhead. The lightbender looked up. "Perhaps we will take a shortcut," he said, beelining toward the busy midway. If Micah had been with any of the circus's other performers, they would soon have been surrounded by eager kids hoping to see some magic, but the lightbender must have been using his power to hide them from the crowd. The magicians who ran the midway stalls waved at Micah, but none of the children even glanced in their direction. Micah sped up to keep pace with the lightbender. "I wanted to say thank you." "Whatever for?" The lightbender sounded bemused. "For telling Mr. Head I would help with Terpsichore," said Micah. "I'm doing my best. The knots full of happy food thoughts don't work, but she's still eating." The lightbender nodded. "You are doing well," he said, "and you should not be disheartened about the knots. At least they have not been so disastrous as my own similar attempt." Micah remembered the scene he'd walked in on that first day, when the lightbender had been hiding against the wall of the paddock. "You said she didn't approve of you trying to alter her mind." The lightbender's illusions didn't have anything to do with bending light. It just sounded nicer than the truth. He told Micah that playing tricks with the light was something people had always understood, even long ago when he first discovered his power. A torch held at the wrong angle in the darkness could turn an oddly shaped rock into a beast. A strange shadow could make a man vanish. But what the lightbender did was much more than that. He tweaked something in your brain so that for you, the rock was a beast, And if the beast growled, you would feel it in your bones, and if it chased you, you would hear its footfalls on the earth, and if it bit you, you would feel sharp fangs sinking into your teeth, or into your skin, which was unbelievably scary if you thought about it, so Micah mostly didn't. I was trying to encourage Terpsichore to have happy food thoughts myself, the Lightbender said. Most animals barely responded to my illusions, so I didn't realize she would react badly. It appears unicorns take such things personally. I didn't know that. Micah had assumed the Lightbender's illusions worked on pretty much anything. There are exceptions. Creatures with human or near-human intelligence are susceptible. Chintzy is particularly easy to persuade. Micah could guess how much that annoyed the parrot. I'm glad I never had any occasion to try my magic on an adult unicorn, said the light. Are they really as strong as everyone says? The Lightbender nodded. I saw a stallion charge into the face of a cliff once. He sounded amused. I think he must have done it for the sheer pleasure of it. A boulder the size of our tent broke free, and he crushed it beneath his hooves until it was sand. Micah couldn't imagine Terp doing something like that. Moments later, they reached the Lightbender's tent, and Micah blinked at the sight of all the kids waiting to get in. It was always strange to be reminded that he lived somewhere where people were willing to line up to visit. The Lightbender's tent was small compared to many of the others at Circus Mirandus, but in Micah's opinion, it was the most attractive. Golden sunbursts glittered against the black fabric, and the tingle that filled the air around the tent was particularly interesting right now, with a storm building and the wind picking up speed. Even on sunny days, the feeling was electric and strange, like the ghost of a lightning bolt that had struck moments before. Micah shivered, even though he knew it was a special effect. The Lightbender had offered once to attempt to exempt him from the sensation. It was only decoration, he'd explained, and there was no reason for Micah to experience it since he was a resident at the circus instead of a guest. But Micah had asked him not to. He thought it was special to live with someone who used illusions the way most people used wallpaper. And the tingle made the Lightbender's tent feel separate from the rest of the circus, the way your home felt separate from every other house you'd ever stepped inside. Micah also liked that the tent was the only one at Circus Mirandus with a guard stationed beside it. Hi, Bowler, he said as he passed by the strong man on his way inside. Bowler's heavily muscled arms were crossed over his chest, twice as wide as Micah's whole body. He didn't have on a shirt, but he wore black suspenders that matched his bowler hat. The hat was tipped low over his eyes when they arrived, but he lifted it to wink at Micah. Bowler, the Lightbender sighed. It's about to rain, and I will not die during this afternoon's performance. I promise. You do not have to stand out here in a downpour. Hi, Micah, said Bowler, ignoring the Lightbender completely. He had an English accent and a cheerful face. Did you have fun with our little Terpsichore? Micah grinned. We're getting along great. No one has ever sneaked into my tent to assassinate me, the Lightbender said. He gestured at himself as if to prove how alive he was. And if they did, I could deal with the situation myself. I am more than capable. The strong man glanced at the illusionist and then tipped his hat back down over his eyes. Micah tried not to laugh. It was true that the Lightbender didn't need a bodyguard, but he had saved Bowler's life almost 100 years before, and the strong man insisted that he had to return the favor. Whenever he wasn't busy doing other work around the circus, he took up his post and refused to budge. Micah followed his grumbling guardian into the main section of the tent. The circular black stage at the center of the room was spotless, and so was the floor beneath the bleachers. Micah suspected Chintzy had been grubbing around for all the dropped candy and popcorn, even though the parrot knew it wasn't good for her. Maybe you should do something dangerous, Micah suggested. You could let Bowler save you, and then he would feel like the debt was paid. Tempting, the Lightbender said, but I have learned that life holds enough danger on its own. I prefer to let it come when it must and avoid it otherwise. Are you staying for the show? Micah shook his head. He opened the steam to his bedroom with a special combination of finger wiggles and stepped inside. While he was changing clothes, the show started in the main section of the tent. If Micah listened, he could hear the muffled sounds of the audience taking their seats in the stands. but long after they fell completely silent. Illusions weren't a noisy magic. He flopped down on top of his patchwork quilt, clutched his pillow to his chest, and wondered, as he often did lately, about Terpsichore. He kept turning the full story over in his mind, trying to come up with a version that felt right. Unicorns were protectors, and foals were rare, so why hadn't they protected Terpsichore? Why had they abandoned her? Dulcie had called it bad luck, but Terp's luck couldn't be all bad, or she wouldn't have ended up here, at Circus Mirandus, with Micah and other people who were trying to take care of her. She must have been scared, he thought. If she hadn't wandered into the circus's meadow, anything might have happened to her. She likes me. She's lost her family, but it could be worse. He sat up. She likes me. Suddenly, Micah knew what was bothering him.